December 7, 1941. The surprise attack on Pearl Harbor was a moment of national shame and devastation. It was meant to cripple America's Pacific Fleet, and it nearly succeeded. But in the smoke and ruin, Japan had awakened a foe they fundamentally misunderstood. While America's battleships sank to the bottom of the harbor, one crucial element of the fleet was missing: the aircraft carriers. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the mastermind of Pearl Harbor, understood that the war in the Pacific would not be won by battleships, but by the revolutionary power of carrier aviation. He knew Japan had a narrow window, perhaps 6 months, to destroy the remaining U.S. carrier fleet before American industrial might overwhelm them. By the spring of 1942, that reckoning was at hand. Japan was dominant, sweeping across the Pacific. But the U.S. carriers, the Enterprise, the Hornet, and the Yorktown, were still out there, ghosts in the vast ocean. Yamamoto crafted a brilliant, overwhelming plan: lure the last American carriers into a decisive trap near a tiny remote atoll called Midway. His goal was simple: sink every American ship and force the United States to surrender the Pacific. What followed would be a gamble of monumental proportions, a battle that was decided not in days, but in a single, terrifying 4-minute span of time. This is the story of Midway. The 4 minutes that changed the war. Yamamoto arrived with an armada so vast it was almost beyond comprehension. 4 of his best carriers, the Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, and a fleet of battleships and cruisers. He was certain of victory. He was convinced the Americans only had 2 working carriers. He didn't know the Americans had a secret weapon far more powerful than any plane or battleship: the code breakers. In a cramped, secret room at Pearl Harbor, a team of Navy cryptographers, led by Commander Joseph Rochefort, worked around the clock. They had penetrated the Japanese naval code JN-25B. They knew the Japanese target was designated AF, but was AF Midway or somewhere else? In a desperate, brilliant deception, Rochefort's team sent an uncoded message from Midway, asking Pearl Harbor to report a water filtration failure. Within hours, the Japanese intercepted and broadcast a message: AF is short of water. The Americans knew the truth. They knew where and when the enemy would strike, but the American advantage was razor-thin. They were outnumbered, and their forces were scattered. Crucially, the USS Yorktown, badly damaged just weeks earlier at the Battle of the Coral Sea, was limping back to Pearl Harbor. The Navy told her crew she needed 3 months of repairs. The crew, driven by necessity and grit, performed the impossible, patching the ship in just 72 hours. Yorktown sailed out, barely seaworthy, a phantom carrier ready for battle. The Americans had the intelligence, but could the battered fleet execute the attack? June 4, 1942. The dawn broke. The Japanese launched their first devastating strike against Midway Island itself. As the Japanese planes returned to their carriers, American reconnaissance spotted the massive Japanese fleet. The moment of truth had arrived. The American carrier commanders, knowing time was everything, launched a full attack wave. But the plan immediately fell apart. Coordination failed. The 3 types of American planes, torpedo bombers, dive bombers, and fighters, arrived piecemeal, without mutual support. The first to arrive was the slow, low-flying TBD Devastator torpedo planes. The first 6 squadrons were virtually annihilated by the Japanese Zero fighters and anti-aircraft fire. The most tragic and heroic sacrifice belonged to Torpedo Squadron 8, VT-8, from the USS Hornet, led by Lieutenant Commander John C. Waldron. Waldron, ignoring faulty navigation, flew directly to where he believed the enemy carriers were, leading his squadron into a deadly, unescorted attack. All 15 planes of VT-8 were shot down. Only one pilot, Ensign George Gay, survived, witnessing the destruction from the water. It was a complete disaster. The Americans were losing, but their sacrifice was not in vain. The Japanese fleet commander, focused entirely on the easy destruction of the low-flying torpedo planes, pulled his Zero fighters down to sea level. The Japanese carriers, their decks covered with planes being rearmed with bombs for a second strike, were left dangerously exposed. The skies above the Japanese carriers were momentarily clear. Then, at the precise moment of maximum Japanese vulnerability, the remaining American dive bombers, the SBD Dauntless, arrived. They were late, running low on fuel, but they appeared from the high, blinding sun. This was the moment of destiny. 10:22 a.m. Lieutenant Commander Clarence Wade McCluskey, having searched desperately for the enemy, spotted a single Japanese destroyer racing back towards the main fleet. He followed its wake. And then he saw them. The 4 great Japanese carriers, sitting like tinderboxes on the calm blue water. The dauntless pilots screamed straight down, the ultimate death ride. In the space of 4 terrifying minutes, they delivered catastrophic hits. The Kaga was struck by 4 bombs, igniting the aviation fuel and ordnance scattered across the deck. The Akagi, Yamamoto's flagship, was hit by one crucial bomb that plunged into the hangar, setting off a chain reaction that ripped the ship apart. The Soryu was hit by 3 bombs and instantly turned into a pillar of smoke. Within minutes, 3 of Japan's 4 heavy carriers were burning hulks. The Japanese naval air power that had reigned supreme since Pearl Harbor was broken, destroyed by American persistence and 4 minutes of perfect coordination. The 4th carrier, the Hiryu, managed to launch a counterattack, successfully crippling the heroic USS Yorktown. But it was too little, too late. American planes soon found the Hiryu and sank her too. The Battle of Midway concluded with a decisive, unbelievable American victory. 4 Japanese carriers lost. Only 1 American carrier lost, the patched-up Yorktown, which finally succumbed to the attack. Yamamoto, defeated and humbled, ordered a full retreat. He had gambled the entire war on one great battle and lost. The myth of Japanese naval invincibility was shattered. Midway was a battle of information, of improvisation, and ultimately of immense courage. We remember the names of the carriers, but we should never forget the men of Torpedo Squadron 8. Their sacrifice bought the American dive bombers the precious window they needed. They traded their lives for 4 minutes of daylight. Midway was not the end of the war, but it was the turning point. From that day on, the U.S. Navy fought the war with the industrial backing of the arsenal of democracy at its back. Japan would never again hold the strategic advantage. The war in the Pacific would be long and brutal, but after Midway, the final outcome was never truly in doubt.